Hello, YouTubers, friends, compatriots, bootlicker, shills, debt slaves, serfs, peasants, vassals, meat sacks. I'm Useful Idiot. Welcome. And first off, I want to thank the 200 subscribers I got in the last 8 months that I didn't post. So I'm not really sure what kind of message they're trying to deliver me, but anyway, it's good to know that the less I post, the more subscribers I get. So anyway, let's go back to Israel today because I want to talk about this movement by Israel to clamp down on campuses in the United States and stifle criticism of Israel. And this is an ongoing process, of course. Israel has many mechanisms in the United States, particularly, but globally to address anyone who criticizes Israeli policies. One of the better known ones are these student programs they run in colleges in Israel, and they give students scholarships if they're willing to go on social media and basically counter any criticism of Israel. And then, of course, we have organizations that are set up through AIPAC. We have the Anti-Defamation League. So Israel takes public relations very, very seriously, more seriously almost than any country on earth, as far as I can tell. And this latest push is part of that movement. And part of this also is this current climate we see where even comedians are complaining that they can't really use provocative material on campuses because campuses and students have become so politically correct and are easily offended. So once again, we find that the herd does not need a shepherd. The other sheep will keep it in line, and that's what our college campuses have become. And the education they get certainly reflects that. But what we have is a pattern of, especially after every single Israeli incursion into Gaza, we have another push by the Israeli State Department and public relations firms to counter this. And one way they do this is on U.S. campuses, the donors apply pressure, and that's what we see, for example, in this incident where a professor who was offered a position at the University of Illinois, his offer was withdrawn after some tweets were brought into the public, some tweets where he criticized the policies of Israel. And once again, we find wealthy donors in Illinois, at the University of Illinois, who put this pressure on. And incidentally, the Mac Daddy of all of them, Sheldon Adelson, actually is part of this and helps finance a lot of these groups, and also helps finance and put pressure on a lot of these organizations as well, being a major donor, certainly to the Republican GOP candidates. And so anyway, so across U.S. campuses, criticism of Israeli policies and Palestine in support for Palestine has reached epidemic proportions to a certain extent. In 2014 alone, there was 152 sanctions against individuals and groups and 300 incidents of suppression. And they use all the usual tactics on campus: harassment, censorship, intimidation, shutouts, retaliation, and the use of language. Of course, one use of language is talking about anti-Semitism. And in fact, anti-Semitism is the charge that's always brought up against anyone who criticizes the policy of Israel. And this is where we have a major problem, and that's at the heart of all these issues, is the fact that criticizing the policies of Israel is criticizing statist policies of a nation. It is not criticizing Jews. It has nothing to do with Jew hatred. And although there can be some overlap out there, a lot of people are very passionate about this. It really has nothing to do with anti-Semitism or Judaism. It is, I think, one of the reasons why anti-Semitism certainly can come up is because of this religious zealotry that we see used to justify statist policies in Israel. And so they have to take their lumps if they're going to use religion as a tool in their policies in Israel. And one of the other things we see that's very disturbing is, not only does Netanyahu come over and speak in front of Congress, and not only are Israeli dignitaries treated like royalty, but we also have this influence, obviously, on uh, uh, Israeli leaders have a lot of weight with American politicians for sure, but we also have this disturbing trend where they're working with state assemblies to try and pass legislation, cutting off federal funding on Middle East studies, and any organization they deem to be criticizing Israel's labeled anti-Semitism, and then they can work through legislation to legalize and codify this prejudice. And and this is going to happen throughout the empire. Of course, we're seeing some of this same sort of stuff in the Eurozone, and we also see it in Canada, where their previous Prime Minister Harper said in a speech in Israel that, again, equating criticism of Israel and anti-Semitism is quite legitimate. But of course, they have a new Liberal government in Canada now, so that may change. But one of the other disturbing trends we see too is also in the state of Illinois, they passed legislation requiring pensions to divest from anyone supporting the Israeli boycott divestment movement. And once again, anyone criticizing the policy of Israel. No surprise there, because Rahm Emanuel is the mayor of Chicago out in Illinois, and he is a Zionist. And so no surprise that we would see these kind of policies showing up in legislation there, where it really has no business being there. And like I mentioned earlier, Sheldon Adelson is behind a lot of funding for this anti-boycott divestment movement, which is, once again, fairly legitimate. There's a lot of people who have problems with Israeli policies globally, and a lot of people who choose to ignore this global interest in this. And the fact that some people want to boycott and divest is a legitimate movement. And then we also have a problem here, because in the United States, Israel treats the Jewish population in the United States, which is actually quite small. It's less than 3%. So think about that, the Jewish influence in the United States with population representation so small. So that's out of whack. But also the fact that Israel and Netanyahu like to treat Jews, even in America, as one giant monolith with the Zionist movement in Israel. And it just doesn't work out that way. And in fact, we have a letter from over 250 Jewish American academics so that they sent to the State Department. They want the definition of anti-Semitism to be more specific, because right now it's worded as that anything that's criticizing Israel and Palestine ends up being legally being able to be called anti-Semitism, which is certainly inappropriate. But you know, Jews in America have a lot of different views, and we've seen this time and time again. Remember, even in the early Zionist days, when Albert Einstein and a number of other academics and noted Jewish intellectuals got together and wrote a letter and described the early Zionist regime as being like Nazism. So anyway, and then schools are going for this, because we also have UCLA introduced an anti-Semitism resolution back in March 2015, and once again redefining anti-Semitism and having it cover criticizing the policy of the state of Israel. So if we see more of this happen, and those kind of policies are spreading to other campuses, this is quite a coup by the Israeli PR department, and I would imagine it's unconstitutional, because once again, this has to do with criticism of the state of Israel and not Jews. And this policy has been developed by Israel to counteract this criticism of their policies, and they consider it strategic. So that should tell you something, that even the Israeli government themselves know that part of their strategy to operate and continue the occupation is a strategic goal that is further achieved by labeling anyone that criticizes them an anti-Semite. And they have people all over the world that are willing and able to basically stifle any discussion of the policies of Israel just by labeling someone an anti-Semite. Just same way they can shut down anyone discussing or asking any questions or opening up any Pandora's boxes when just by labeling them a conspiracy theorist. You know, interestingly, one campus complaint of anti-Semitism involved just getting a dirty look. So obviously, this college campuses are a place where open minds are no longer encouraged, and that we have the herd watching itself. And last but not least, one of the reasons why I wanted to do this video right now was to talk about the fact, because this affects could potentially affect people like me and other people on YouTube, and also just the whole way that search engines and everything else works. Last November 25th, the Israeli Deputy Foreign Minister met with Google, officials at Google and YouTube, and they are, quote, working on, quote, a joint working mechanism to fight against inciting violence and terrorism, unquote, and also to, quote, prevent the publication of inflammatory material, unquote. So we know what that means. Once again, they're going to bring this very narrow definition, or actually this broad definition of what anti-Semitism is, and they're going to bring it to Google and YouTube. And with more pressure from the Israeli government, you will not be able to find the kind of material you want doing Google searches, and you will not be able to see people like me discussing Israeli policies and being critical of Israeli policies here on YouTube. So the news tightens, but not surprising. This is something that the Israeli government is very serious about, and it's quite surprising how much they can infiltrate the campuses across the United States and make their Zionist message resonate so much. So there you have it. I'm Useful Idiot. Don't you be one too.